We're here.
Okay, cool. Right, that's fine.
We've had our little stressful moment and got it out of the way, but it's been recording the whole time, so I'm going to use that footage anyway. Because it's the behind the scenes to this, which is my inaugural episode of the Ash Taba Show, which is really about, for me, talking about stories, right? Storytelling from different vantage points, whether that's more implicitly in what we see in films and books and TV, or from the perspective of in business and advertising, or also from the angle of from a societal point of view, the kind of stories we're told and the stories that we tell ourselves. So that's just a little bit, I guess, of a thing for anybody who might be watching this for the first time. And I think being the first time for me, it couldn't be more poignant that I have you, Sam Goyal, as my first guest, because we go way back, right? We go back to high school days. So, you're an entrepreneur. You're really growing and have grown in the solar space, and we'll talk about that. But I think before we get into it, it'd be great for you to give a little bit of your backstory, your origin story, and kind of start from there, and we'll see where it takes us.
Lovely. I mean, I'm really excited. Actually, this is actually quite awesome that we're doing this. I'm so happy you're taking this initiative. And frankly, I think the topic of storytelling is super important, right? It's a topic that weaves throughout probably every single facet of our lives, right? Professional, personal, relationships. And I, for one, I'm considered a pretty good storyteller. It's one of my strengths. So with that, maybe we start from the origin. I'll tell you how I got my superpowers.
Do it.
So where does this story start? Look, basically, I'm 36 years old, right? And I've just got a flash says that my internet connection is unstable. That's the Indian. I was born in India. I moved to Singapore as a kid. I think I'm what you call a quintessential, a TCK, or third culture kid. I left Singapore when I was 15, got expelled from school because I was a troublemaker. Ended up in Australia. From there, I ended up in Spain when I was 16. That's when you and me met, right? When I showed up an Indian dude with dreadlocks into a pretty, let's say, posh neighborhood in Madrid, into a pretty nice international school. And then you ended up being my neighbor. I think that was quite a defining point in my life. And after Spain, I ended up in the UK, where again, we ended up being in the same university, in the same college, neighbors next to each other, which was also pretty awesome. That was my first experience with Yorkshire, the north of England, the north. Before the wall was ever built, we were there, right? And I ended up in London, did my master's there, from London to New York. Kind of showed up on a cold, blizzardy winter night in New York City with a suitcase and a dream and a one-way ticket. And I must say that was another defining point. Ended up staying in New York, ended up getting a job there. My first experience with startups and entrepreneurship, where I met my now ex-wife and also your good friend that you know for the last 12 years. And basically in the States, man, I think my entrepreneurial journey really started because I got picked up with a cybersecurity startup as a finance intern is how I went in. Ended up becoming their director for sales for Asia Pacific over the next few years there. And that was where I had my first taste of so-called entrepreneurship. And I think I was super fortunate because my mentor and the founder of that business was a self-made billionaire. He kind of taught me from ground up, how do you build a business? How do you run a business? This was before the days of kind of tech being cool. It was still a very hardware-driven business, and I learned a lot, man. I learned a lot, kind of, of course, a lot about IT, but I think more than anything about, how do you tell a story behind a business? Because at the end of the day, when you have a new product, a new business, a new idea in a new market with new technology, you got to help people understand what the hell it is that you do. That's one, right? And the second thing, which I think is even more important, is getting people to have an emotional connection with your story, right? That's why people buy from you, because they like your story. They like you as a person. Right? Anyway, so after the US, back to Asia. So after one big round from Singapore to Australia to Spain to UK to New York. I ended up back in Singapore, and was doing the tech thing for a while. And then, this was around, gosh, almost 9 years ago. I felt a calling. I felt that what I'm doing, selling firewall boxes, I mean, there's got to be more than life, and there's got to be bigger problems to solve. And I was kind of always passionate about renewable energy. I've always been a bit of a hippie, as you know. And I got super lucky to get accepted at a course at MIT about creating new ventures in clean energy. And again, this was much before the days of where solar was cool. And we were taught a number of different things in terms of solar, wind, blah, blah, blah. But because I'm a city boy at heart and always grew up around built up urban environments, I felt that solar has the most potential to make a difference in our kind of everyday life. So I was inspired. That was my first kind of, okay, that's it. This is my time. And I left the tech stuff behind. and I always knew that I'm going to start something on my own. That's just who I am as a person, right? But I also realized that in order to learn, you need to learn from ground up, right? So I went and got myself a job at a solar panel manufacturer, handling the Indian market. That was my first real, let's say, experience with doing business in India. And then I'll share a few of my recommendations and learning after that. The first big one was just don't do it. And that took me 9 years to figure out. By the way, I'm back in India now. I'm talking to you from India.
Oh, we're just losing you a little bit.
Even though Singapore is my home, my base. His gang were one of the few to start this business model. Oops.
It's back. It's back. Keep going. We're good.
Oh man, apologies for this internet. Ashley, we paid for the good connection, but is it still? Am I back?
You're back. You're good. You're good. But I mean, I think where the story kind of left off was maybe
Okay,
was a good little point.
This persists. I really don't.
We're fine. We're fine. The story kind of left off at a good little point though, because I had a bunch of things that came to mind with what you'd said already.
Go ahead.
So I will let you continue the story in a sec, but the thing that struck me the most was that you said you first felt that entrepreneurial calling when you were in New York and you got that job in New York, right? Which is interesting because I'd be keen to get your thoughts on like what was it? Like what was that moment where you at least consciously were aware of it? And the second part to that is more my take on it, which is knowing you, I would say that you've always been an entrepreneur. And maybe that was obvious to other people, and maybe you had to figure that out yourself, or did you always know?
That's a good question, man. Like, it's actually a really good question. I think I've always known an entrepreneurial nature, but I never put a definition around it. You just do, right? I mean, what is an entrepreneur in the first freaking place?
Well, you
right?
say you just do, but that's you and your frame of reference. If a lot of people don't just do, that's the thing, because they're wired differently. And it goes back to, well, what's their upbringing? What's their nature? What's the story? For me, I look at you and I go, from the age of 17, knowing you, you're one of the most curious people that I know of for everything, not just business, but in life. And I would imagine that curiosity is a huge pillar of what it is to be an entrepreneur that actually does, not the one that just puts it on Instagram because it sounds.
It's a good point. It's a good point, but frankly speaking, while I think it's actually a really nice insight about curiosity, I feel that actually, I think there's many facets of it, right? In fact, as a prep work, you'd asked me to think about some points, and I've been doing some thinking. So let's address this topic, right? What the hell is an entrepreneur? And then I'll talk to you about where my calling came from. Look, it's a very good question. What is an entrepreneur? I don't know. Is it somebody who starts a company? Is it somebody who solves a problem? Is it somebody who tries to make 1 + 1 = 3? Is it somebody who recognizes an opportunity and wishes to make money off of an idea to solve that opportunity? Is it somebody that is just doesn't like authority? Is it somebody that values perceived freedom? Is it somebody who purely wants to make money? Right?
I
Is it
mean, you could
somebody
go
who
more
is
macro, right? More macro than that, even just whilst we're spitballing. Is it somebody who is a creator?
bingo, Ashley, bingo? And I think
Because then the rest
this
of it
is
is
this
like
is it.
sub strands. The rest of it, that depends on the
That's it.
person. If it's money or raising funding or whatever the stuff you said, that's going to be totally dependent on the individual. But the level above it is the world we live in is predominantly set up for us to be consumers, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think if you work at a company, a lot of that is set up for you to operate within that consumption mindset. Like, what's my
Mm-hmm.
paycheck? What am I getting?
Or produce, right? Either consume or produce. Right? It's always this
Understood, but
produce, consume, produce, consume.
an entrepreneur, really, as you know more than anybody, is got to produce till they can actually consume, and it takes a while. Like, you might not get paid for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the glam that no one, the not so glam that people don't talk about.
Oh, that's a whole big topic we'll break down shortly. But let's come back to the topic of defining an entrepreneur. And I think the point that you hit, which really is for me the basis of all of this, a creator, right? And I think there's a difference between being creative and being a creator, right?
Uh-huh.
The reason I differentiate that is because being creative is that you think of outside the box as a simple way, right? You think about different ways to solve a problem or different ways to express yourself or different ways to create and build things, make things, right? Be that a piece of art, be that a poem, be that a company, be that a play, be that. And a lot of times creativity is, I think, linked to the arts, right? There's a lot of natural link there. I see it in a slightly different way because to create, again, it's a sexy sounding word. Sounds cool, right? But, I created a new painting today. Does that make me a painter? I created a new piece of hardware today. Does that make me an inventor? Right? I guess the point I'm trying to say is the notion of creating, I think, is quite different for everybody. Right? Everybody has their own method, their own vehicle, their own expression. And for me, I suck at drawing. I'm pretty shitty at painting. Uh, I'm okay with words. I guess I could make some poetry if I wanted to, but I'm no Wordsworth over here, right? But what I'm good at is I'm good at creating a vision, creating a story, actually. And more importantly, because I think this is the second and more important part of this, creating is one thing, but executing is another. And I think when you marry those two, I think that's when you're getting closer to entrepreneurship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because basically, ideas are cheap. Right? You can sit and talk all fucking day and talk about all the ideas of the world. And there can be some really good ideas. But taking an idea, creating a product or service around it that solves actionable problems in a competitive way that is cheaper and more efficient than what's being done already. And then having the entrepreneurial grit and resiliency to eat shit for the next several years of your life, to be able to see your idea probably get shot down by the world and you fail. Right? 99% of the time, that's what happens. And then sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you get lucky that, hey, wow, the idea that you had in whatever at your garage, at your poolside, mine was a poolside company. We don't have garages in Singapore, but we have poolside. So we started our business there. But I think there's so much to unpack that, I feel it's probably better for this conversation to stay around the, let's say, the storytelling theme behind entrepreneurship.
Well, so that's good. And like, I think for me, one question as you were talking that comes up was, super valid, which is that idea of you have the idea of creativity or some spark, but then that alone is meaningless without the action. And I think a lot of times people can live in one extreme or the other, and the balance between the two is what's key, right? Like, you can take action aimlessly without an inspired vision, and you're on a hamster wheel. Or you can think and daydream all day long, but jack shit happens because you're not being effective. So the balance is key that I don't think much is spoken about. But also, what do you think the disconnect is? Like, what's the disconnect for someone who has an idea and doesn't execute it versus someone who has an inspiration or a vision, whatever we want to label it, and decides to go with that impulse? Is that something you have to nurture, do you think, or is that just
Well, it's a really good line of thought here because I'm looking back at my own journey, right? Instead of trying to preach about what others should do, let me dig into my own
Mhm.
experience and learnings, which have been, significant. Uh, Most of those learnings the hard way. um, so I think number one, right? It's harsh reality. I mean, it's just harsh reality. We live in a competitive world where everybody who thinks they know something doesn't know shit, right? Everything that I think I'm good at, there's 1 billion people who are better than me at doing. And there's millions of people who have more resources. There's millions of people who are luckier. There's millions of people who are better positioned. So I think that's one big important thing. That's one of the advice I always give to aspiring entrepreneurs. Get out of your head. Get out of your head. Get out into the real fucking world and
that's
be ready
really
for
cool.
some slaps.
This is a cool sort of angle, the sort of aspiring entrepreneurs and the fact that you are already giving advice to those types of people. What are some of the common sort of challenges you think that these people find, the ones that you come across, and maybe some of the misconceptions they have? Because there might be someone one day that may actually watch this who wants to be an entrepreneur and has seen it as the new sexy thing because it's the rage now, but maybe hasn't got the wiring accurate with the reality. So I think this could be really valuable if you could talk a bit to that, you know?
Well, the first thing I always share with people, because I speak a lot on this topic, man. I'm a pretty well-known public speaker in the solar space in Southeast Asia. A lot of my topics are around entrepreneurship because Solar Horizon, my company, we're one of the few who actually started a solar business with nothing and end up competing with some of the world's largest companies, right? So we're always known as the underdogs and the kind of crazy, friendly neighborhood developers who just are playing this game without any right to do so other than vision and passion and being good at a few things. But anyway, coming back to the first thing I always say to people who tell me, ask me about entrepreneurship, I just say simple: just don't do it. Don't do it unless you are prepared to eat a lot of shit. Unless you are prepared to stretch yourself to boundaries you never knew possible. Unless you're prepared to lose your friends, your marriage, your money, your house, your stability, your sanity. Unless you are prepared for this journey, my friends, don't fucking do it. Go get a job. It's much easier.
Well, that just sounds like life, though, what you're describing, right? Like all that stuff of entrepreneurship is life stuff, isn't it? This is
Exactly, brother.
the same thing they say to actors. It's like if you want to do anything else, do it. But if you want to be an actor, you best believe you have to like want to be in for the long run because there are parallels. Like, I don't think I'm an entrepreneur, but I have entrepreneurial tendencies because of
Hmm.
the film and acting industry being so unstable,
And self-starting, right? Nobody's gonna hand you a freaking gig. You gotta go out there and
well,
fight
and
for
much like a startup, you have to invest money and time and effort and blood and
it. Hmm.
sweat and weekends and evenings where maybe you're not partying Friday, Saturday, Sunday when you're in your 20s all the time because you have a vision
Hmm.
that you want to execute on, and that doesn't get enough credence. And I think this is important too because I think about this a lot. That doesn't mean you've got to work 20-hour days. I think there's a lot of false talk, especially in the West, about that now, where to be an entrepreneur or to be like someone who does their own thing, it means you have to just work like a dog. And there's a
Well, okay, so let me address this point now. Good point you're bringing up. So here we go. Man, most people who look from the outside, self included. I want to answer one question you asked at the start and I missed. Where did I feel my real calling of entrepreneurship? Man, it just sounded cool. Oh, tech startup. Ooh, denial of service protection on internet. What the fuck does that even mean? It sounds cool. It's a startup. This was 9, 10 years ago. Huh? So imagine 10 years ago, startups versus what a startup is known today as an established ecosystem wasn't quite there. More in the US than anywhere else because US has always been the leader of innovation in entrepreneurship. The point is that, I got attracted to it simply because hey, it sounds cool. I can wear my jeans to work. Uh, I don't have to be in a corporation. I get to do a lot of different things and think I'm really cool. So that's when I got into the space. However, very quickly I realized that, and okay, I lied. It's not very quickly actually. It's taken me almost 10 years and taking a sabbatical for almost 1 year last year after I lost my marriage for my business. I lost my home for my vision. I lost all my cash because I went through a tough time right in the downturn. Um, and I took a year off to figure my shit out. I had no fucking money. I set off, right? I ended up in South America, in the mountains of the Andes. I mean, I ended up in Europe, on the beaches of Barcelona, penniless. and, and I had a lot of time to think and reflect. I had a lot of time to look at my own narrative, to change my narrative, to hear other people's stories, to share my stories, to let it evolve, to let life happen, right? Just let go of control and just go and flow for a while. Um, and I tell you, that was probably one of the most difficult things that I did. But it's only through that inner work that I come to realize that, you know, why do I continue to eat this shit every day? Because I can't justify to myself spending my time and effort and energy building somebody else's vision and focusing on somebody else's interests and somebody else's agenda. And when those agendas are driven around returning profits to shareholders and driven around covering my ass and delivering my KPIs and making my boss happy, and loosely connecting what I do in my daily basis to this grand vision of my big corporation. While I think, I would be really good in the corporate world in one side, I think I would suck on the other because I am a guy who I need initiative, I need quick decisions, I need resilience, I need grit, I need fun, I need informality, I need some sense of facing adversity and overcoming that and having real consequences, not just, oh, I lost my fucking job, so I don't have salary for another 3 months.
Well, it's not just that, it's that it would stifle your creativity. It goes back to that creator element again. And I can say that having worked in these environments in the digital marketing world, grateful for having done it and what it's given me, but also there was always that time for me throughout where I felt that it didn't fully resonate and everybody else seemed pretty content, which is cool. But for me, I felt there was always a barrier to creation. And there was a barrier.
That's such a good point, man. Stifling of creativity with this framework. Well, let me add another element of motivation to that, which is also the notion that you are responsible for your success and your failure, i.e., that you have no one else to blame in this world if things go south. And you know what? If things work out, well, you know that you had a part to play in that.
So that's true. That's true, but I don't think everybody gets to think that way. Maybe people don't ever get to think that way. So, is that something that you feel like you've been wired with from day one, or have you had to sort of evolve that thinking and rewire your stories internally to have that mindset?
Well, look, I've been blessed, man. When I look at my life, and while I've been through, like everybody, enough shit, to realize that life is real and not everything is rosy. And if you can see closely, I don't have all this gray hairs a few years ago, but I think I've been blessed that my family and friends have always supported my vision. I've been blessed that, I always had a home and parents who would, feed me if I needed it. I've been blessed that my ex-wife, who's still a very dear friend of mine, put up with me for so long as I pursued this journey, and still wishes me all the best with it. I was so fortunate that one of my best friends came on board with some capital when we needed it, and came on board to help grow the business. So, having said that, I've also been on the other side where, both my family faced financial difficulties and I got financially wiped out due to a failed acquisition. And I realized that, yeah, man, end of the day, you got to learn to trust the universe, especially if what you do, you believe that it is helping make a difference to some bigger agenda than yourself. I think that's another important part of that motivation, right? That, while on one side, I know if you measure impact by the amounts of megawatts or amounts of dollars that you deploy, I'm sure I could be deploying a lot more solar working for a large corporation who is a big independent power producer with a huge development team and hundreds of millions of dollars and big salaries and nice planes to fly around and stay in hotels, while I, versus the life I've been leading, going with budget airlines, Airbnb, sleeping on couches to get to that big meeting the next day, at the cheapest cost possible. But I realized, yes, if you measure impact in terms of megawatts, which is my unit, my business, yeah, I'm probably having a lot less impact than I could. I don't really measure impact like that. I don't necessarily measure impact by the numbers of dollars deployed or how big my gig is versus yours. I measure impact with, you know, are you making a difference in more people's lives around you, right? Number one. Are you growing, right? Are you contributing to your industry, to your community, to your fraternity? Uh, are you helping other people, right? Are you allowing the world to help you? Are you facilitating exchanges of value? Are you sharing knowledge? Are you bringing one cultural best practice and applying it to another place, being that bridge between them, right? So I think from that measurement of impact, I think I'm fortunate to say that I've made a pretty good impact so far in my little world, um, and I think that's what keeps me going.
And I think
That's when I wake up.
that's everything, right? Like I think having that why that's deeper than just yourself, because a lot of people, you ask them why do you do what you do, and they either A, don't know, B, they do, but the answer is surface level, like, you know, I can make X amount of money or buy shitloads of stuff, or it makes me feel good, which is, it's about the me all the time, which is great. But it's super interesting that your narrative immediately wasn't about me. It was about how you can contribute and impact the world around you. Because I think ultimately that's what leaders do.
Yeah, but the truth is, look, yeah, but I don't. It sounds a bit too leadery there. I mean, the truth is, look, that's what fulfills me. So ultimately, I'm still doing it for myself.
Fine.
So I would lie to myself if I said, "Hey, man, I'm just doing it to create it." No, creating impact and making a difference and helping change people's mindsets and making shit happen and bringing people together, united around a common cause and a larger vision, creating more sum of parts. That fulfills me. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel that, hey, I'm doing something with my life, right? And as an example, okay, I'm in India right now because last week I was conferred uh, an award as and recognized as a 50 global green leader, right? Um, Now, if I look at my bank balance, uh, it's pathetic, right? I don't have savings. I don't have medical insurance. Uh, I don't have a cushy nest egg somewhere. I don't have all that. I don't have, daddy's money. Uh, and I don't have the investment money anymore because we fucked that up 7 years ago and lost it. Expensive learning lessons. But so look, by that measure, I'm a failure. I'm okay to accept that. I'm okay to say that. It's okay. By the yardstick that society defines on us in that particular sense, financially, let's say, because let's not ignore, you know, financial success is also a measure of success of the business model, of the ability to compete, the ability to win. So we can't detach the competitive capitalistic side of what we do, right? We all want to make fucking money. That's not, it's not disillusion. However, if I look at another yardstick in terms of every time that I speak on these stages to groups of 200-300 people, full of people in suits and ties, you know, talking about solar or wanting to be part of solar or the clean energy revolution, I know that I stir people's minds and hearts. I know that I'm able to create an emotional, endearing connection with a freaking solar panel, you know. But why? Because it's not about the fucking panel or the rooftop or the goddamn cost savings. It's about the fact that all of us as humanity have a democratized source of energy that belongs to all of us. There's no oil rights on my sunshine and your sunshine. And me using this sunshine doesn't make it any less for you, right? And sunshine is free. It's forever. And the day the sun stops shining is the day humanity perishes. So for me, that's what an entrepreneur is. The problem that I see is we don't have enough power in our world. Power is expensive. Generating power is at the expense of raping our planet. it doesn't make any sense to me when we have this source of sunlight and power shining down every day. Fuck, we complain about how hot it is. We burn more fossil fuel energy to create more air conditioning, to cool our homes because of the energy that's been given to us for free is something we're not fucking harnessing. I mean, how ridiculous. And when I see such a problem and such a solution, and clearly not enough people doing something about it, I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm going to do something about it. And maybe I'm not deploying 700 megawatts like my big government linked competitors. But you know what? We're still putting up panels on rooftops where they weren't any. We're still helping investors deploy capital. We're still creating attractive returns. We're still following the agenda of my country and our region and our national renewable energy targets. Right? So I think that's what it is. When you see an injustice being done or a perfect solution right in fucking front of you and nobody doing enough about it, I think that's the real true motivation of an entrepreneur. And the truth is, Ashley, when I first got into it 10 years ago, I didn't know my ass from my elbow. I didn't really know why I was doing it. It's only now that I've physically given up everything and I've chosen to do it. It's not that I'm so dumb and so blind or so stupid that I lost everything around me because I'm just, a dumb guy. No, I'm not dumb. And I've consciously traded off and given up certain things that for most people would seem insane. Most people would not think it okay to give up a steady source of income, to give up a home, to not give up a marriage, but to recognize that I have to let it go in order for me to continue with what I believe my real purpose is on this world.
I think this is
to give up that stability is not an easy choice.
I think this is a super powerful thing to be talking about because number one, I don't think it's the sort of stuff that is discussed that openly that often. And I think that the key that for me you hit on was the fact that you said that you didn't get into it initially knowing this, but once you knew what that purpose was and things weren't on the surface working out anymore, you still kept going, and I think a lot of people would quit on so many of the points that you've been through because
look, and they wouldn't be wrong, Ashley, and they wouldn't be wrong. I mean, honestly, at certain points, you also got to be real with yourself, right?
But we're talking about
if things aren't working.
We're talking about that idea of an entrepreneur, of a creator, of someone who has a vision. And yeah, I don't know. There isn't a right or a wrong. I think it's that perspective of where you're at in that moment of your life.
But hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me correct you. I don't think it's that simple. You don't get to call yourself an entrepreneur because you're a creative guy with a vision. Every fucking guy has a creative guy with a vision. I think to be a real entrepreneur, I think there's those several layers, right? I think that creative, that visionary is the first important filter, right? But your Instagram influencers today seem to have great visions of traveling the world and they're super creative. But for me, that's not quite entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. The second piece of that is also having, the ability to pull people together. And I think this, coming back to our big theme, this is the power of stories. What do? I bring people together and make shit happen. That's what I do. I can do contracts, financial modeling, sales pitches, investor relations, bloody proposal comp, whatever shit, site surveys, measurements, design. All that doesn't matter. All those details. But a true entrepreneur is somebody who is able to bring people together to make shit happen. Be able to unite people around their vision, right? And then the third part is having that entrepreneurial grit and resiliency to take a hit, to take a kick in the gonads, to fall down, to be pushed off the building, and to break your legs, but to get the fuck back up. And then there's another one, competency. It's all fine and brave, keep doing that, but if you keep falling off the same building each fucking time, well, you're an idiot, right? If you keep doing things the same way and expecting a different outcome, is defined as insanity. And I think that was my tipping point. It's only 9 years into my entrepreneurial journey through its different vehicles, and for the last 7 years, my own company, Swearword. It's only last year that I realized, yes, I want to keep going, but I need to start doing things differently.
I think that's super interesting. I think that's a really good thing to go a bit deeper into if we can, because I think that moment comes to people in different ways, and no matter what they're doing, that sort of in storytelling, it's kind of what you would call the dark night of the soul. If you read Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey,
Ooh.
whether you believe it or not, it's that part where you've had a journey and then you think it's going well, but all of a sudden stuff falls apart. You know, in film writing, it's sort of what happens about 3/4 of the way into the film, and that's when
Yeah, I can relate to that.
that's when your protagonist, your main character, which we all are, we're all the main character in the movie of our life, right? You have this dark night of the soul where shit's falling apart and it's like one thing after another, after another, after another. And you have a choice to make in that moment. And that's not like a moment like in the context of a 10-minute window. That moment could last for a year or an indefinite amount of time. Time doesn't come into the picture. But that dark night of the soul is where you then have to decide, do I go back to what I was, or do I try and evolve out of this into something that I don't even know what the fuck that is yet, but that's gonna full circle me to whatever lesson I need to learn.
You made two really good points I want to pick up on. The first one, the one you said, that we are the main actor in the movie of our lives. I wonder, and I'm starting to believe this, and I'm also starting. I just had this epiphany now. I wonder what it would be if we lived our lives rather than believing we're the main actor in the movie of our lives. What if we consciously chose to become the supporting actor in everybody else's lives around us?
It's a nice thought.
Because ultimately, I think that's where a lot of gratification comes from. I don't feel good when I see my bank account with lots of money. I feel comfortable and peaceful and knowing I can go spend and take another trip. But I feel good when I see somebody else's mind changed from my inputs or somebody else being helped. I don't know. It's a different topic for a different session, but
yeah, it's a nice thought. I suppose that goes into a much deeper topic, like you say, around consciousness and what level that has to be at for us to be able to be that selfless, if it's even possible for us as humans with the way the mind's wired. I don't know.
So let's put that bucket aside. I just wanted to bring that. So I want to address one other point you made, which is this dark night of the soul concept. And as you explained it very well, the resonance that struck with me was with the story of the alchemist. And basically, it's the shepherd who goes out looking for his treasure, going around. I don't want to give spoilers, but for fuck's sake, people, if you haven't read it by now,
if you've not read it by now,
okay.
Yeah,
So basically, the story is that he goes all around the world in search of his treasure, going through all these different adversities and points in his journey, only to find that his treasure is right back where he started. The interesting point was that in the journey of a journey, if you map it out, there's these different points, and one of those points is the point of no return, which is when it's longer to go back than it is to go forward. So generally, when you're at that point, the dark night of the soul's considerations is easier than like, fuck it, just keep going. The second point of that, in that journey, the next point rather, is the point just before you reach that destination where you want to give up, which is when you're faced with the hardest, most pressing challenge that you can't believe that you're facing at this juncture when you're almost there, that really makes you feel like, fuck it, give up, what's the point?
So again,
and that point, which is the dark night of the soul consideration,
in storytelling, in some circles of storytelling, there's a guy who wrote this book called Save the Cat. Not everybody's a fan of it, but from just a structural perspective, it's really interesting, especially if you're writing for the first time. And he breaks it down. He talks about that moment before the dark night of the soul, which is called All Is Lost. And so
yes, I love All Is Lost. I've just been through that last year. And I can tell you,
you know what's so awesome about
very despairing feeling.
but you organically just said, I love All Is Lost. That's interesting to me. That's interesting because a lot of people might say All Is Lost. Yeah, that was fucked, but I got through it. You said I love All Is Lost, and I think that's but I think that's interesting because whilst we may have really pivotal moments in our lives that are dark night of the soul, and we have to evolve, and there's some that stand out more than others and really evolve us. On a more micro level, I think they're always weaving in and out of our life in different guises,
That's
you
it.
know?
That's it.
And I think you have a choice of accepting that and embracing it and going, okay, I can sense something is coming. It might not be like Mount Everest collapsing on me, but it's still going to be a bit uncomfortable. How
But
do I?
it's a very simple answer. Why, Ashley? Why do I say I love all is lost? Because I've learned the firsthand that sometimes you need to lose everything to find yourself again.
Sure.
And that's why I loved all is lost. Because I told you I lost fucking everything. But in that journey, what I found in myself, discovery of myself, was priceless. And I tell you, man, it's only when I came back to where I started, $10 to my name in August, I remember, after this crazy journey of going the whole world with no money, uh, but having a very clear and peaceful and calm and aligned sense of self and purpose and vision, and knowing that I don't know anything, and knowing that I can't control anything other than my own choices, my own attitude, my own responses, and knowing that life is uncertain, and that's what makes it exciting, and knowing that the Mind Valley has a very cool video how they do it nicely, right? The pulse, the doof, doof, doof. When he
That's
goes, if
so
there's no up
funny.
or no down, there's no life.
It's
Right?
interesting you
And I think
mentioned.
that was so powerful.
It's interesting you mentioned Mind Valley. Sorry, because I was just literally watching something yesterday from the guy who heads up Mind Valley, and he talks about the different stages of consciousness. I don't know if you've seen this.
I know that one.
You
Yes,
know the
I
one
have.
I mean, where he talks
Yeah.
about people who are in that initial stage where it's the collective kind of just you're in the mass consciousness, you're not really engaged with anything on a deeper level. Then you kind of move into another level of consciousness where you're more of sort of an active collaborator, you're more of a visualizer, you believe in that ability that we have to manifest stuff. And then he talked about a few levels above that where some people tap into, where the third level is more about creating your internal system and understanding that it's not
Oh, I
just
haven't actually seen this. No.
no. I watched it
Ooh.
yesterday where he says, the second level, as he labels it, and I don't know about the levels, but the idea is one thing is to be able to create and see a vision that you can manifest externally. But then there's another aspect where you can also realize that you have a capacity to create your inner state and your inner neural programming and your inner being and your inner stories to be for a greater benefit to yourself.
This makes me wonder, right? It's such an important, interesting point. People talk about it as a higher state of consciousness, and other people talk about it as deeper levels of consciousness. So I'm wondering, what is it? We go deeper in here, or we go higher up here, or is it both? It's interesting, this word usage, huh?
Labels are just for our own egos to feel comfortable, right?
Ooh, I like that quote. That's a nice one.
I just pulled that out of my ass right now. It's probably
That was a good one.
It's probably someone else's, but I'm gonna claim it and copyright that shit right now.
You should. It's a good one.
I don't know, man. I think it's an innate thing, right? I think that we all have like a deeper sense we could tap into. Where that comes from, is it external or is it internal or is it both? Like at the end of the day, doesn't matter as long as we can tap into whatever that is. And no, that is one thing that he talks about later with this Mind Valley talk, where he says inspiration of some of the most genius people. You think about writers and artists and entrepreneurs at the highest level, they all seem to talk about this idea of being struck by something that is sort of bigger than them. It's almost like channeling a vision or a message. I read Stephen King's book it's called About Writing, I think, or On Writing, something like that. And he talks about a lot of times he hates the process of writing, but he forces himself to do it because he knows through the discipline of doing it, there'll be a moment that comes that it just flows.
Interesting.
It just flows, and it's not necessarily that you're doing it, but it's not you, if that makes sense. I think that's what
it kind of does, because I wouldn't say autopilot, that's a strong word, but I think it's not quite muscle memory. It's more like that inner thing you just do it. You just do.
It's like a flow. A flow.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's what a lot of people who get into acting and performance get into it for, because they'll have one moment for 10 seconds in a class or on a film set where they feel that. And it's like, what the fuck was that? And then like you don't have it again for years. But you're always
Yeah, that's when you sometimes see two people's dynamics on an improv setting or something like that, right? Where it's just flowing.
but that's just the
Yeah.
context of acting. I think that's available to everyone no matter what they do, you know, whether you're working in solar and you're going around, you know, the world trying to talk about your vision, or whether you have a calling to be a carpenter who does, you know, amazing
Mm-hmm.
handcrafted
Mm-hmm.
tables. And I think that's a state that I don't know how you nature or nurture it, but I think we all can tap into it if we allow ourselves to. Don't know how the fuck we do,
Absolutely. That whole notion of stealth starting, right? But hey, I want to come back to one interesting point, which is the role of storytelling within our respective contexts, right? And context I want to focus on is about the importance or the role of storytelling in entrepreneurship and business, and starting a business and then running a startup or whatever you call it. Right? I think the first one and the key one is people need to have an emotional connection with you, your company, your product, or your service, right? In order for them to engage. If I just see a toothbrush in a supermarket stall and there's just 6 toothbrushes with different brands, I'll probably just choose which is the cheapest, right? It becomes a very price sensitive, price and utility kind of area. If I'm looking at let's say, uh, 3 or 4 different jackets, right? And each looks different. One has a story about it being hand woven, one has a machine woven, whatever. But you know what? I'll probably still choose something that I like and I think it looks good on me. So it's very subjective. So no matter how great the story is, you don't fucking care because whatever, you perceive what looks good. Now, when you're selling a solution, right? A solution meaning a way to solve a set of a problem, right? Be that a solution such as solving the taxi issue, which is where the ride-hailing apps came on. Be that a solution to our energy crisis, where renewable energy is being bought out of. Right? Specifically, in my case, let's say you're selling a business a solution to embrace solar energy without the upfront cost, and entering into a long-term contract to get your solar system financed and have pay for it over time at a discounted rate. Now, firstly, I need to get the guy or my client to connect with solar energy. If I don't get him to connect with my product and my why, right, then it doesn't matter what my business model is or how big my projects are or how great my pricing is. It doesn't matter. Or if it matters in as much as to make it like a normal business. You're a vendor, it's a tender. Yeah, great. But I don't really enjoy doing business that way. Man, we're harnessing the sun's energy to help you generate cheaper power and save your business money without any upfront spend. Right? You're getting solar energy. You're going to harness the sun's potential. You're going to save the money. You're going to protect your rooftop. You're going to reduce your need for air conditioning. You're going to look good in the press. You're going to save your carbon emissions. You're going to be able to report that to your bosses and to a more carbon sensitive consumer. Right? So a lot of benefits in going solar. And I think that's where we start our story with. Why solar energy? And once I'm able, and I'm very visual. We show people stunning solar systems on big towers, on cool industrial applications. We create an emotional bond and buy into the solar story first. Okay, that's my pitch. The second part is right, the solar leasing business model. Okay, now you bought into solar, you're connecting with solar, with sunshine, with clean, renewable energy, right? With the imagery of clean beaches and sunshine versus dirty, coal-fired, bloody industrial revolution shit, right? So, okay, I've got you. Ooh, okay, interested, come. Secondly, okay, the business model. Look, you can buy solar, you can invest in solar, right? If I was a contractor, I'd be asking you to invest in solar, but I'm a developer, right? I'm interested in bringing other people's financing to your facility, right? So I'm convincing you on solar leasing as a business model. So why leasing? Why not get it financed? Why not get it investing? Why not all these other different models? Why not get a loan? Well, dude, zero upfront cost, zero upfront risk, focus on your core business, let us handle everything, save money from day one, have no operational risk, get all the benefits without the cost and without the headache, right? You're like, wow, that's a great business model. I'm selling him a story on this business model, right? So now I've got him on solar, I've got him on leasing. Now I tell our story. Well, who the fuck are we? And I've seen it. I've seen some of my competitors' pitches. All the big guys, full of cash, all nice suits, fancy shoes, right? They spend the first 30 minutes talking about how great their company is and what projects they've done and why they're the best. And look at these 16 dudes on the team and everything that, oh my God, people are falling asleep. And then you say, this is what solar looks like. I'm like, dude, I'll talk about my company at the end. Why solar? Why solar leasing? And then why solar horizon? Nice, because we give a shit. And because for us, we're not the biggest guys on the block, but we're more boutique, we're more focused, we're more niche, we're premium. We only work with people who are interested in this, and we get them the best value in the market. We're independent developer, right? We're entrepreneurs. We put our own blood, sweat, and money. This is our own money.
Well, and it's authentic, right?
Exactly, Ashley.
It's
then
authentic.
I show them my track record as well. But the best part is in sharing about solar, what does solar look like? What are the key considerations you need to have? What are the risks? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? I already established my track record and my credibility. I don't have to sit there and tell them I'm good. They understand that we know what we're doing. And then I show them my track record at the end. Look, we do have a track record. I have done it for some of the largest government companies in the world.
But that's what branding is. I mean, branding gets a bad name, right? But really, branding is
it does.
bad name.
Like a fucking branding.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because it sounds very Don Draper, mad.
They want money from me for branding, or what is this?
Yeah, not in the Madison Avenue bullshit sense, but in the sense of just like, this is an emotional connection that you're curating with people. That's really all branding is. It's got a whole load of shit that's been dropped on it.
That's a very nice way of defining it, man, without all the bullshit. I like that.
Without overcomplicating it. That's what you're doing. You can use a different label, but really, it is that, and that's the long-term game. I think a lot of people are probably thinking short-term. They've got profit and losses and balance sheets, and they have quarterly objectives and annual objectives, and those are important, no doubt about it. But
and valid.
I think you also have to have a vision that's a little bit more beyond the next 12 months. Like, not to have a strategic, I'm going to do this in 5 years, but to know that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so you don't have.
Let me come and I'll add to that with the power of the story, right? So, dude, imagine this. I mean, I think we've got it pretty fucking down, right? That's one of the reasons we're good into this space. We're pretty good. I mean, I have the big balance sheet, our own technical engineers, but we know how to tell the story. So how I start by saying, look, I'm not here to sell you anything. That's my first word when I start a pitch. I start my sales pitch. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here for your money. People are like, what? And it's true. I'm not here to sell you anything, motherfucker. It's solar. I mean, come on. You've got a rooftop. You're drawing power. You're paying for it. I'll give you a way to harness that free fuel for cheaper savings and green electricity without you doing much. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not even asking for money. I don't want your money. We've got investor capital.
It's different when the mindset shift is, I'm not here to sell, I'm here to help.
And that's the power of the story. It's the power of the story. Of course I'm there to sell.
So
of course I'm there to pitch. Of course I'm there to promote my agenda. But I have to give the person a feeling. And in fact, it's the truth. If I'm coming there to sell him a product or sell him software storage or hardware or a new office machine or some new tables and furniture, yeah, fine. I mean, clearly, if I'm there to say, hey, I'm not here to sell you something, I'd be like, well, yeah, you are. But when I come in, we're here to help unlock value, right? Harness underutilized space to unlock value, right? So that, I think what I'm trying to say, Ashley, and why I'm so excited, why I'm really excited about this topic and its relevance with, I think, life in general and more specifically within entrepreneurship and business, is that I think the art of storytelling is probably the single biggest differentiator in why companies win and why companies lose. If I look at some of my competitors in my industry, and I'll give you a hard fact. Forget my industry and my stupid small
any industry.
Look at Uber. Look at Snapchat. I mean, Jesus Christ, right? How did they raise billions of dollars in public listings without being profitable companies? The whole purpose of listing your stock in a stock market is that your future profits are given to a share of your future profits are given to the people who fund you today. There's a collective belief that there is a sense of the future coming, right? The future profits are coming. Now, generally, when you list, in order for people to believe that there will be future profits, generally companies are already profitable. That's the reason the market believes and why they put their hard-earned money into this story versus the other guys, because he's already making money. Now, along come all the new tech companies, the new paradigm, right? We're not making money. Some cases we don't even plan to make money. Our business model can't even make money. But damn, I have a sexy story. How many users do I have? All this future potential that's going to happen. How cool and fun it is, and I'm connecting people. I'm so emotionally and you get a 40 billion or 30 billion dollar IPO. So for me, one of the gripes I used to have, okay, I used to believe that every business is valued based on how great a story you can tell. That's what I thought startup is. You're running around telling stories with nice decks to investors who are dumb guys who just give you cash for the future.
I think a lot of people think that. I think a lot of people think we're successful with startups because we've got this much seed funding or whatever, capital we've raised from investors. And maybe there's a truth to that, but that's not real. That's not like the market honoring you. That's individual investors.
But hold on. Now, I'll finish my piece. I said I used to have a gripe with these valuations. I used to be the guy saying, fuck tech valuations. It's all bullshit. I'm not going to name names, but in my market, in my competitors, there's one guys who are rotten financials, terrible, terrible back end, but raising gazillions of dollars because of their stories, right? Spend those marketing dollars, create a great deck, have your founder come on and share a sexy story about why we choose to do it the hard way, and then you raise 50 million bucks. People love the story. You look deeper into your financials, it's rotten. It's a house of cards. It's a sham. So I used to be the guy having real issues with this. Then I realized this much. I realized I was just being a sore loser. I realized my story wasn't as good as their story. More importantly, while my story may be good, you know what? It's not the story that the dumb money will follow. Dumb money wants stories like my story is solar in future, but my valuation model is discounted cash flow. It's based on the contract value of the electrons you're going to generate and how much you've agreed to sell those electrons at for the duration of your contract. It's a very simple, basic, normal, or not normal, that's the wrong word, but traditional valuation based on the cash flow projections of your business and the value of that today. Right? So no matter how sexy my story is, my business model isn't based around disruption and having a certain amount of users that I'll monetize in the future to advertising. And then I just put some arbitrary number on that value. And then the story is what the value is negotiated based on, right? So I realized, well, either I can choose to continue to be sore at them, or I can shut the fuck up and go start a tech startup. I'm sure I can raise a lot of money, being a hoo-ha, great, big events, Mr. Founder in his cool-looking things with tattoos, share a great story about how we're going to disrupt the world. Silicon Valley, I love that show because it really caricaturizes all of this nonsense that goes behind a lot of these big money flows. Now, why do I not sit and bitch about it anymore? Well, clearly I am. All right, but and I'm doing it in a smart way.
Except for now, where the public like I'm bitching,
right? It just sounds like I'm telling a story. Again, see the power of stories. But why do I not bitch about it anymore? Because, man, either I shit or get off the pot. Simple as that.
Well, and there's enough piece of the pie out there for everyone, and if that's what they want to do to get their finance, then great. But story that's great is one thing, but a great story with authenticity is
a story with substance, Ashley. Now, this is the difference with the role of storytelling within business versus the role of storytelling, let's say, in entertainment, as an example, right? In entertainment, where you have a story like a movie or let's just use movies for easy, why do you're watching a movie? Why? Because you want to be entertained, you want to be stimulated, you want to be endeared, you want to have the emotional connection with the protagonist and his journey, you want to feel the ups, the downs, the lows, and you want a nice resolution. You want to feel that you've left with something, either entertainment, either insights, whatever, either emotional feeling, right? So a good story, and I think it's the same point here, but a good story, even without huge resources, like a huge budget, can still be told beautifully through film, right? So if you have a great story, generally there's substance.
Mm-hmm.
This is my point. When it comes to the world of business, particularly entrepreneurship and startups, you can have a great story, but without the substance, people will see through it eventually. Look at Bitcoin. And this is what I realized, you know. Bitcoins, you saw those stupid events they would do where they would raise $100 million
Oh
and
yeah,
like
and
ICOs or
there
whatever.
was a window where like everybody and their dog was buying Bitcoin because they thought it was going to make them uber rich, and everybody.
And I remember seeing it. I remember seeing one of those John Oliver things where he rips it apart and he shows some of these events where the guy's like, we don't even make money. We don't even want to do anything. But buy Bitcoin because we have rapper celebrities and we're cool. People are just buying that shit. I'm like, damn. But you know what? That's the other thing I realized. There's no shortcuts in life. If I choose to continue on my path, and one day hopefully I will be financially successful, then I will know that it's because there was substance. And that for me is a good enough reason. For now, maybe in a year I change my mind. I'm like, oh, fuck this. Let's get together. Ashley goes do a startup. Come, and I'll be the founder. You be a co-founder. We'll go sell some nice stories.
Only if you wear that suit and get
you
those
know.
tattoos and stuff, right? That's the only way.
Well, I have the tattoos. I'm just covering them today. But
Okay.
and you know, I don't know how to tie a tie, so my suits are kind of with the t-shirt kind of suit.
Well,
But,
I'm not getting a tattoo for love nor money, man. So I don't know. We'll have to find a
Hey,
third
never
person.
say never, Ashley. Never say never.
I know
But,
what you're saying, though. I think that substance, that authenticity is key. I'd be surprised if you lost that now that you've really owned it the way you have. But
well, yeah, I just don't think, I realized for me this year at least, the start of a new decade, start of a new chapter, letting go of so much emotional baggage, reinventing myself and my approach to my life and the way I'm doing business. I mean, this year I'm embracing the nomadic life, right? I am floating through my region, uh, working primarily remotely through my team in Singapore, through my team in Malaysia. I've built the ecosystem now that I can support it and manage it and contribute to it remotely. A lot of it is brain work now, so that can be done wherever the fuck I am. Um, so I'm like, okay, let me try doing things a different way. Let me do my investor engagement differently. Let me renegotiate my current partnerships and commitments and pricing for my contractors. Let me, thankfully, we just did a nice big project after a long time. That was one of the luck and timing issues. Finally got a bit lucky at the right time. But I think for the year ahead, because last year I was fortunate enough to have the time and effort to focus on my inner work and a lot of my reflecting and thinking and learning and reading and spirituality and meditation and all that good stuff. This year, I'm like, okay, now it's time to do. Now it's time to apply everything that I've learned and just flow, man. Take each day as it comes. Have consistent good days every day. Be healthy. Focus on self-care. Do something for those around you. Whatever small thing that may be. Embrace, explore. Let the universe show you the path. So kind of have a much clearer focus this year in terms of my what. Definitely, my why was last year, figuring out my why. This year is my what, and the how I'm gonna
the
figure out and
how
pivot
the
as
how I
life
think
goes on.
is when you're open to receiving that stuff. The how kind of you can sort of define it, but it also will come to you in the moments as well. So I think it's when you're in that state of a bit more open flow.
That's it.
That's there, right? So okay, let me ask you sort of finally before I get into a few little bits that I want to ask that are maybe less deep,
Sure.
or maybe they will be deep. I don't know. My final, I guess, real question around entrepreneurship that I think is going to be sort of more of a contextual thing is, say there's someone our age, mid-30s, or younger. Let's say there's a young guy or young girl in their 20s. They see the ideal of what entrepreneurship is now. Right now, the label, the story it gets is much sexier, as you've spoken about earlier, than maybe what it was a decade ago, right? And that could be dangerous. It also could be exciting. But what would you say to that person who wants to get into that world now and is wanting to just start? Like, how do they start? They've made the decision they want to do it no matter what. How do they start? And what's the one piece
No,
of
but
advice?
hold on. So are you saying somebody who wants to get into it and is considering why they should, or somebody who's decided that? But again, what do you do? How do you decide to be an entrepreneur? That's just for me. I don't understand that. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? That you don't want to get a job? Go get a job is the first thing I would say to that person.
I think
Go
that's
get a fucking job.
I think that's the
You
thing
know?
where a lot of people are in, right? They see it as entrepreneur equals not working for someone else. I think there's a lot of that going on.
The only reason to be an entrepreneur is because you see a problem and you figure out a way that you think you can solve it. That's the only. I mean, you don't just decide. Oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Okay, now let me look at 500 problems in the world. Then let me, this is the startup factory kind of thing. Like it becomes so formulaic. And I'm like, dude, that's the first thing I would say to that person. You've decided you don't want to work for the man. Well, you're an idiot. Go get a job. Get some real life work experience, swallow your fucking ego, right? Go figure, live the real world for a while, and then ask yourself again, in maybe 1 or 2 years.
That's
Then, when you come back to me in 2 years, now let's talk. What have you learned so far?
That's super fucking
How much
powerful.
money have you saved up? How much money have you saved up?
Well,
what did you learn about the problem that you're trying to solve? Why do you think you can do it better than the company you work for? What resources and competitive advantage do you have behind that? What are you willing to give up and why? First of all, what's wrong with working for somebody? Who you go to report to an office every day? Come on, these days everything is remote working anyway. It's results based. It's not a freedom issue. That's just stupid, right? If it's a freedom issue, well, you just got your priorities wrong, my friend.
No, I think the freedom thing, you're right. These days with remote working, I can attest to that. You can work from
anywhere. You're really working from anywhere and getting paid £400 a
Yeah.
day.
I think it's super powerful what you're talking about, though, because it is really clear that there is that misalignment of I just don't want to work for someone else. I want to be an entrepreneur. But
nobody decides to be an entrepreneur. If somebody came to me and said, hey, Sam, guess what, man? Shit. I've been watching every day on my bus. I take the same route. I see that at this corner, there's this one issue with this one thing, and every day I see it. And one day I said, fuck, man, there has to be a better way of doing this. Or, hey, what about this great idea? And I thought about all these issues and I played the devil's advocate. You know what? I think I might have something that worked. And you know what I did, Sam? I went and researched online. Somebody's already doing this. I found 4 guys who do it. You know what? Mine is different this way. And I've thought about this. Actually, if I make this service, now I thought about this, and I have 4 or 5 of my friends. Each of them are willing to do this much free work for me in the evening. I have an uncle who can put me in this, that. I think I have about $10,000 that I have, of which I can put aside 3,000 to live off for the next 3 months, and then this much to develop my product or my service. Okay, you're an entrepreneur already. God damn it! You don't decide to become one.
I think it's a super
started.
Yeah. No, I like
now
that.
You come to me and I'll say, dude, that's a great idea. And if we go through the stress tests and I see you're for real and that you're driven, and that even if I don't help you, you're still going to do this. Even if I shit on you and rain on your parade, you're still going to do this. And I will shit on you on day 1. I'll see if you come back to me on day 2. Because that's exactly what happened with me, actually. That was my journey. And I got shit on it, come back on day 2 even stronger. And then I realized, so go through the stress test. Because as an entrepreneur, what do we have? Our time and energy. That's the currency we have. If we have money to spare, well, we're more of an investor, an angel. That's different. Right? But if you want my time and energy, and my time and energy is the only currency I have in this world, you better be fucking for real. And if you've come to me because you've decided to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to go back to my first advice. Shut the fuck up and go get a job, especially if you just come out of school. Seriously? Like, really? I was in an entrepreneurial journey because I worked for a startup. I was still an employee, man.
I think, yeah, that's so fucking. I think
still work for somebody.
It's
I
so
learn discipline.
It's
you need to
so
show
clear.
Up on time.
Yeah. I think
you
to have that,
be there. You need to do stuff.
I think to have that clarity on it and to really talk about it from that really sort of specific point of view is really useful, because I think it makes it black and white. And I think, yeah, that experience, it's true. People talk about it all the time. You don't have experience, then what are you offering? What's the value? What have you learned to then actually come to the table?
Let me refine that a little bit by saying, dude, you know what? Actually, when I started my company, I started my business at 28, 27, 28. I got my first $500,000 check at 29. Pissed it all away by 31. I'm 36 now. I started my career when I was maybe 23, 24. Worked in startups for a while. Worked in that one corporate job at World, which was the basis of me starting. And to be fair, I did that because I knew in 2 years from now I want to start something on my own. Right? So I went to get a job in the industry, work my way up at the bottom, learn the ropes, build the relationships, understand your ass from your elbow, and then think about starting something. Right?
Smart.
So it was a concerted effort. But my point is, I didn't have that much experience. And unfortunately, I've had a very expensive education at the expense of my shareholders. What I'm trying to say is, if you don't have the experience, but you have the vision, if you've identified a real problem, you've come up with an excellent solution, hey man, we can hire the experience. Hey man, we can raise the money around that. But if you come without that natural thing, because you think you want to be an entrepreneur because it's cool or whatever, then you got another.
No, I think it's totally valid. I think the latter thing of the thinking it's cool and you want to do it is probably more wholesale happening at this point in time. That's why I think what you said before is more pertinent, because it's really talking to that idea of get into the world and try things. And okay, experience, fine. There's different strands of what that looks like. But, if you've had 5 or 10 years working in an industry or 2 or whatever, it's better than nothing, because at least you get to see and flavor.
Dude, 2 solid years in an industry, you're ready to start something within that space.
Sure.
At the very least. Now, the other thing I'll say is, and now assuming we've got all these filters in place and then there's a real entrepreneur who's here and ready to go with something good. Okay, here we go. Now, let me be happy to share my learning and experience and my network, right? Because one thing is getting preached to about what to do, what not to do. The other thing is getting introduced to people who can help you with different pieces of building your business, right? So, and the network is where that's the power, right? Because when I open my network to somebody, I have credibility with my network. So they will listen to me and help the person I've referred them to, right? So it's currency. So the first thing I would say, dude, like I said earlier, get out of your own head. Second one, the big one, don't believe your own bullshit. Whatever it is you're sitting, don't believe your own story. That's what it is. Whatever bullshit story you have to the world about how great your product is and how vision driven you are, please don't believe your own bullshit. In the end, know that what's bullshit and what's not. Okay, and don't believe your own stuff. The third thing is, when you come about your business, know what your competitive advantage is. Right? Where do you fit in this value chain? Where do you do something better than everybody else? Right? Find a competitive advantage. If you don't have one, well, you're going to fail, or you're just not really going to succeed. In my case, my competitive advantage at Solar Horizon, I didn't know it at the time. I just thought I'm going to set up a business. Was we were good storytellers. We had a good story. We were good at selling. We didn't know shit about development, about licenses, permits, financial modeling, assumptions, cash flows, outputs, IRRs, fucking investment, term sheets, contracts, PPAs, MOUs, EPC contracts, technical yield analysis, design. I had not a fucking clue.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
But we could sell. Right? That was our competitive advantage. And we built a business around that. But it took us many years later to realize that, after pivoting many times and realizing we suck at everything else, then realizing that's where the big need is, and everybody else is good at doing all those things, but everybody needs people who can sell, because without the project, there is no EPC, there is no development, there is no investment, there is no bank loans, right? So the origination was what we were really good at. So that's the other point. Know your competitive advantage. And then focus on that advantage, right? Build that advantage, right? Another one is don't FOMO. In your head, if you're in your head, you think you're cool and great, your ego, there's no place for ego in all this business. Leave your ego at the door. Leave it at the door. And know that you're going to get shit on, and be ready for it. Know that you're going to lose. Know that you're going to work really hard and put in more hours than all your friends in cushy jobs with salaries, and you're sitting there bitching about freedom. You will lose your freedom.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? You got to get used to the fact that you're going to lose, and you have to almost try and enjoy the fact that might be happening.
Exactly, because there's a beauty in that, right? Because you learn. Every time you lose, you fucking learn. And that's the whole beautiful journey of entrepreneurship. It's a learning journey. And how much you learn, Ashley, it is so exciting. It's amazing, right? Um, and then a couple of the other things is I also want to start wrapping it up. We're going quite long, but is that, look, man, this lesson I only learned, this concept I only learned last year, and I'm only now actively and consciously applying this lesson. Balance your ambition with your capability. And have the humility and wisdom to know the difference and see the gap for yourself.
That's self-awareness, right? That's a self-awareness
Exactly.
thing.
My ambition was here. I wanted to do 30 megawatts in my second year as being a fucking punk-ass developer. That's $20-30 million of business. My capability was here. So I always had this gap. But because my storytelling ability was so great, I would gloss over the big gap, but people would believe me.
And I suppose if I could throw that out there, tell yourself the stories that you should be chasing it until you realize you needed it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coming back to the point of believing your own bullshit, right? The story I'm telling the world, I'm believing it myself. I'm an idiot.
I think there's definitely space, and I think it's happening more and more in recent times where there has to be a conversation around just insane practicality and clear ambitious visions. Ambition's important, otherwise what are we doing here? But also not built on a foundation of just complete fairy tales and Disney stories. It's got to be.
Well, one of my mentors told me that. He's like, look, Sam, it's not, look, if you have a gap between your ambition and capability, it's not that you reduce your ambition. It's that instead of focusing on increasing your ambition, focus on building up your capability. And as your capability builds, naturally your ambition will build too. And as your capability and ambition build hand in hand, the more likely you are to realize your fucking ambitions because your capability is able to get you there. And I think that kind of that cycle, that relationship for me,
that's important.
I can see it now. It's to do with ego, man. It's to do with ego. It's to do with insecurity. It's with every human being has issues with self-worth, self-identity. Right? We all face that shit.
Of course.
And I think for me, that was why I would use story and the power of my effective storytelling to make up for my insecurity.
Love that.
And I realized that, what? Nowadays, actually, nowadays it's not the story that matters to me anymore. Because guess what? When you stop focusing on telling your story and start doing and building your substance, other people start telling your story for you. And that is the most powerful, the concept I want to end this thing with, is that one thing is telling your stories. The other thing is doing and living and letting other people tell your story for you.
I love that. That's I think that's a good point to kind of let that wrap up around there, because that's just all about not giving a shit about any of the judgments,
Just doing what you need to do and doing what you want to, doing what you know you need to do, and just doing it, man.
Focusing on being happy. Focus on happiness and what you enjoy doing, and it rolls from there. I love that.
Well, happiness is another big one, but you need a whole another hour.
We need a whole another hour, and
I'm not going to open that now.
And I can't take any more of it. But there's a few more little, let's say, little fun things that I want to do. So
sure.
I got a little thing I want to do that's called What's Trending, because I got gimmicks.
Ooh, I
got stories. I got gimmicks. So you're in India now, aren't you? Right? So
yes, I am.
Let's have a look. I want to see on Twitter.
What's trending? Coronavirus in Asia is
well on Twitter right now. It could be something else, because at the moment.
Yeah, but don't do India. Do Singapore, which is my home, or do Southeast Asia. I'm in India because I'm in India, escaping the fucking virus.
All right.
Entire talk, vibe, all my decisions, every single thing that's happening in Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific is trending because of the coronavirus, bro.
Well, that is pretty much. I mean, aside from some of the political stuff around
Trump in India.
Trump says he wants to leave controversial Indian citizenship law to India. Yeah. So we don't have to talk about that.
That's more India. You type in Asia, man, and it's coronavirus. Just globally, I think trending is coronavirus.
In Singapore, what is trending right now is. It is, yeah. It's all.
I mean, of course, dude. entire.
Yeah,
That's why
yeah.
I'm in India. I'm supposed to be back in Singapore yesterday. I changed my tickets and flights. Yeah, the entire business is being affected.
It
So
is
anyway, now
crazy.
that you know that's trending, okay, what are we? What's the?
Well, the whole premise is we look at what's trending and we have a few minutes to just kind of talk about these random things. It's less random because we kind of could expect it that it was going to be Corona. Let's not get into any kind of too deep stuff around that and conspiracy theories or whatnot and the why and the how.
No.
But I guess what would be cool, or not cool, but interesting is you touched on it, how it's impacting individuals from like a business perspective. And like you have changed a lot in the last few weeks.
I'm literally experiencing the disruption of COVID. Let's call it COVID because coronavirus is the old word. With COVID-19, right, dude? For the last 6 weeks, my entire life and those of everybody around me have been 99% disrupted by COVID. So in Singapore, we put an orange alert. The government put an orange alert, and that's one shot of red. Quarantines, business continuity protocols, forced work from home orders, schools shutting, all sorts of crazy shit. Businesses having to put staff in different offices and no meetings and all sorts of nonsense, right? What I want to talk about though is just for this last 2 minutes, what I think is the bigger story than the disruption is the fear factor. And what the fear factor can do, which the real disruption is not from this stupid fucking virus, it's from the fear factor.
So we're talking media,
in general, bro, humanity, human being.
Yeah.
Right? Our own sense of self-preservation. And then this is that book Sapiens that I've been reading recently, and that gave me a lot of insight around this topic. Because we as a human race have overcome war, famine, and plague. We have overcome disease. Right? And because of the evolving religions of humanism, right, we believe life is sacred. So saving of lives and any death of humanity for reasons to do with disease is something that's a very big deal in our world. Right? Pain, disease, famine, plague, all of these things we have overcome. So when something new like this comes up, I think that resuscitates the human condition around, I would say, the society conditioning, social conditioning.
Well, so and that human condition, though, that innate fight or flight, primal.
Yes,
like,
yes,
you know,
exactly.
It's both. But exactly. Also,
it's those layers.
The propagation of that by the media. That's why I mentioned the media before, because it's not just us, like me here. I know what's happening, but I don't know the degree of what's happening actually, you know, at the core where your part of the world is until you tell me or I watch the news, perhaps. So there's different layers to how that fear gets triggered.
For sure. The media is 100%, I would say, part of this fear factor. However, I think the second thing that's coming out of this fear factor is the xenophobia.
Oh, really? Oh,
dude.
Okay. Yeah.
No. So many countries have blocked any Chinese nationals entering their borders. Dude, in Singapore, which is a Chinese country by race, Singaporean Chinese are now having xenophobia towards mainland Chinese. For fuck's sake, even for me, the other day I was in the food court. There was a Chinese dude there. He was coughing. I'm like, oh my God. You see in Europe, you hear about it in the UK. It's happening all over. So the xenophobia, and it's unfortunate because there's another third thing that's tied to this whole thing, which is China's story, right? The China story has dominated the last decade of our progress. The wider Asia story is dominating and will dominate that story of the next century, right? This is Asia's century. And, you know, with the whole trade war with US, China, with the rebalancing of power and all of this stuff that's been happening, you know, and then the Hong Kong protests, which are all to do with the democratic things and the patrolling. So for this to come up, and the cause of it obviously being this wild game eating of fucking bats and whatever shit, this has really affected the China story. And the China story, one thing is to do with its place in the world. The other thing is to do with the economic fundamental linkages. So for example, China is the world's factory, right? So because of COVID, factories are shut. The China's supply chain disruptions are massive. And then because of the fear factor, people have stopped going out to eateries, to shops, to F&B, to transport. So when in Singapore, when I left, I flew 9 days ago, 10 days ago. I have never, in the 27 years that I've lived in Singapore, ever seen the airport so empty. Actually, it was eerie.
It's
So it was
crazy.
second or third busiest airport.
Mm.
And then you look at the, I'm looking right now all around. I mean, there's no F&B sales. There's no sales going on. The malls of Singapore are empty. So when I was in Hong Kong just before I came to Singapore. I'm glad I got there. I've been like in the epicenter of all this shit. That's why I'm in India now. I'm like, fuck it, I'm not going back. India, the COVID can't survive here, baby. We're like, come, you can't survive here. We got immunes that'll do the fuck all. This ain't nothing. Bring Ebola, that will be scared. So India and Africa were like, fuck off, COVID. Go, white people. So India's cool. We're no issues over here. But the shit is spreading in Italy now.
Yeah,
It's spreading in South Korea. Yeah. And what's interesting is when Singapore took those drastic draconian measures that they knew would greatly impact the economy, guess what? Within 15, 20 days, they managed to control it. They've controlled the spread. They've contained it. They've blocked their borders from all. It's pretty serious fucking efforts over there, right? But that completely decimates the economy. The government has to just announce in the budget, $5.5 billion care package to support the COVID disruption in a country that's 6 million, 7 million people, right? So what I'm trying to say is that this shit is real. Soon, another 2 months, you guys will start to see your supermarket shelves cleared. I think the panic buying and the panic hysteria is just starting on your shores. If you look at the actual statistics, the influenza in the world kills a lot more people. Normal flu kills a lot more people than COVID, right? But it's because it's unknown. It's because it's spreading in this way. It's because it's the fear factor. And I tell you, my brother, my prediction is that this is going to be part of the new normal. I don't think it's going away forever. I don't think it's going to be a global pandemic. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the way we define pandemics these days versus what the plague used to be 300 years ago is very different. Right? But I think it is easily the number one trending topic in life, conversations, business impact, fucking wow, yeah, it's trending like a motherfucker.
It is. Cool. I have a final little bit. It's just 10 questions, and then we are done. So
I like it.
Did you ever watch Inside the Actors Studio? You probably did.
No.
Well, never mind. They had like 10 questions that they stole from a French interviewer, and now I'm stealing it from them.
Okay, great. At least you're giving them credit.
Yeah, I'm giving it credit, but I'm stealing it quite openly because I don't think they're on air anymore. So fuck them. And if they are, whatever.
All ideas have been done before anyway.
Yeah, exactly. All good ideas are stolen anyhow.
And ideas are cheap anyway, right? Unless you can execute, get people to come and watch this show, then you're just another creator with a vision.
Exactly. Anyway, let me execute these questions on you and
do it.
There. So, very simply, question number 1: What's your favorite word?
Fuck.
Okay. Yeah. What's your least favorite word?
Authority.
What turns you on spiritually, emotionally, intellectually?
Oh, these are 3 different turn-ons, man.
No. I'm trying to make.
I'll give you an answer to all 3. So emotionally is kindness, compassion that turns me on. What was this? Spiritually is gratitude, the feeling of gratitude and feeling connected and one with the universe is huge turn on, straight going on. And third, what did you say? There was emotionally, there was spiritually, and
intellectually.
Intellectually. Humor.
Oh. The flip to that would be what turns you off. You can do a sort of broad one on that.
Intellectually is hypocrisy. Emotionally is being unkind, mean, bullying, asserting power unnecessarily for the wrong reason. Spiritually is fucking religious dogma. I can't take it. Okay? These are the 3 things that turn me off.
Gotcha. What's your favorite swear word? I think you already told us anyway, but I'll give you a chance.
It's my favorite word because look at Osho. Osho's published a beautiful writing about the word fuck and how it all these different ways, and different meanings and nuances, and there's wide diversity. And it is my favorite swear word because it can be used in so many different ways, creatively as well. I can say.
That's true. That's true. There's
And
something.
it's not even necessarily swearing. Sometimes it's also like, for example, it's cool as fuck.
Yeah.
It's become the
ambidextrous.
It's the English word that I think we have that no other language has it.
All right. Well, this
way of using it.
I'm gonna flip this because your favorite swear word is your favorite word generally, but it's English. So let's play a little bit differently and say, what's your favorite swear word that's not in English? Because we got some Spanish stuff that's a great swearing language.
But I tell you, yes, but you guys don't come close to Hindi.
Oh well, give me Hindi then. Man. Give me your favorites. Give me your favorite Hindi swear word.
I can't say it like this in this company.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. You're gonna get what?
Behen ka lavda means your sister's dick.
Yeah, that'll do it. Moving swiftly on. What's your?
It'll be like your sister's dick, man.
Yeah, that's gonna really offend somebody, especially if they do have a sister. Oof. What's your favorite sound or noise?
Good question. Laughter.
Yeah, that was a good one. What's your least favorite sound or noise?
Snoring, and I'm guilty of it too. I snore. It's so fucking annoying.
God damn it, Sam! Stop snoring.
But I laugh more than I snore. At least I think so. So
in your sleep. Oh right. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, I lie. My most annoying sound. I lie. Now that I'm in India, I know. Fucking honking.
Yeah.
Honking of cars. Honking.
I was thinking you might have said that.
Because you can hear it 100 times in my background. It's just so annoying.
It doesn't let your mind settle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost there. What profession other than your own would you most like to attempt?
Teaching. I'd love to teach.
Yeah, I can see that. And what profession other than your own would you definitely never want to do?
Tax accountant.
Yeah. But we need them, man. But they're needed. So whoever is a tax accountant out there, we need you guys.
Respect to you guys. I need you as well, but you charge too much money for such a service.
That is true. Yeah, exactly. Rebate a little bit or something.
A side note to all you tax accountants right now who are watching.
I'd like to say if I've got tax accountants as my main audience, I'm just going to give up on this shit, to be fair.
Yeah, might as well just give up, Ashley.
So,
we can package it, go to the tax accounting guild for sponsorship.
Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah. Anyway, last one, wrapping it up with the questions. When it's all said and done, all the smoke's cleared, you get to the end, what would you like the story of your life to be?
Well, the end is basically the grave or the cremation, right? That's the only end that I see. And at that point, God only knows what my story is going to be, actually. I don't know, man. All I know is that, as long as it doesn't put people to sleep, good enough for me, man.
I like that. Okay, cool. Well, listen.
Hold on. Before we wrap up, I have a question for you.
Oh, shit.
But I think that's the one I'd like us to end on.
Okay.
And I think it's a good question for the other guests that you bring on, and for your viewers. Why are you doing this series, Ashley? What's driving you to do this, and what do you aim to get out of it? And more importantly, what do you aim for your audience to get out of it? Just three questions in one.
Yeah, so 3 questions in one. I think firstly, I think there's a big aspect of it where I realize that I know a lot of different people from different walks of life. And I look back and I go, shit, I'm 36. That's not old, but I've had some experiences and I've crossed paths with people. And I think their stories being told could be really valuable to others who might watch it, because I'm talking about people that maybe aren't, celebrities, known names, mega influencers,
and dudes in a room.
And I think it's important. We can see all that stuff on YouTube now, and that's great. I watch those shows too. But I also want to be able to relate to people that are working through their stuff that maybe are going, they're not at that sort of higher tier, for lack of a better term, yet. You know, what's the working actor doing? What's the guy who's working at a digital agency, who's working his way up the ladder? How does he process it? What's the mindset of someone that's decided to go from working at a company to going freelance? Or what's someone who's been on an entrepreneurial journey for a decade or more got to offer that might be beneficial to people out there? So there's that sort of intrinsic desire to do that. I feel like there is a capacity that I have to have those kinds of conversations with people, to empathize with what they're saying, and I enjoy it. You know, that's the honest thing. Selfishly, I was thinking about this. If I got to interview somebody like this once every week or two, I'd happily do it for free in perpetuity, because it's fun and it's exciting. And
Bravo,
it's
Ashley.
you know?
Bravo. And if I may suggest, to start your next session with this very important point, so that your interviewee, your listeners, and yourself always have that grounding, right? The why. And I think you know that very well, and you practice that. And I think that would be a wonderful way for you to start your session with, A, why you're doing this, and B, why this guy or girl that you've chosen. You know, and that could be a great way to help you next session.
And look,
I'll be the viewer for sure, live viewing. That'll be me. So
you
one of your viewers.
You and that one.
Not for this one. I'm not going to watch myself again, but the next one, I will be a viewer.
Beautiful.
So, you know,
this thing.
Thank you, man, Ashley.
This thing's a work in progress. No, thank you, man. Listen, last bit over to you. You know, whoever does watch this, whether now or down the future when we're all both super famous, where can they find you if they want to engage with you on social? And you know, what have you got going on? What do you want to plug, if anything?
Well, look, man, LinkedIn, best way to reach me. Samrit Goyal, SamRidGoyal. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm always there. Instagram, I just stick to LinkedIn. And I think my kind of just closing statement would be this, man. Like, you know, just remember that entrepreneurship is really hard, but it's also really rewarding. You know? And it's only by facing adversity and overcoming it do we grow, according to Mark Manson. And I think that is probably the single biggest takeaway and motivation for me in my entrepreneurial journey, which is the ability to continually learn and grow. Because I tell you, man, there is no sense of satisfaction like the inner work that one can do when one is prompted to do. And one does. The impacts of that in your daily living and your peace of mind and your heart space, your emotional space, your mindset. Amazing. It's amazing. And it's a journey I would, like I say, encourage everybody to consider, but also recommend that only the few crazies who have everything to lose should attempt. And you know, let me know. Anybody wants to reach out, I'm always here for a chat. Don't waste my time though. I don't have time to give. But you wanna have a good chat about good shit, call me. I'm always there.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, my brother. With much gratitude. It's been a great session. Thank you, Ashley. So happy and excited about the Ash Taba show. Remember, I have 2-3 great recommendations for other guests to come on, so let's follow up on that. Let me know when it's up. I'll also share it on my social. And dude, wish you all the best in this journey, bro. It's exciting.
Thank you, man.
Really glad you popped your cherry with me, one of your oldest friends.
Couldn't be any other way. Two people who really formed a bond by talking about wrestling back in the late, 1990s. There you go.
Shit. So I'll leave you with a famous quote from a recent visiting politician. Namaste. No, Namuste. He goes, Namuste.
Beautiful. He meant. Well,
all right, brother.
He should have just said, "Peace out, bitches."
Yeah, seriously.
Thank you.
All right, Namuste, my friend.
Namaste.
See you, bro.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.